Thank you for joining XR Om, India's first AR/VR focused podcast. Today, I'm delighted and honored to have with me Christine Perey, who's the founder of Perey Research and Consulting, that provides expertise and thought leadership in all domains of augmented reality, spatial computing, Internet of Things, and other adjacent technologies. She served as the founding executive director of the Augmented Reality for Enterprise Alliance and leads the Area Interoperability and Standards Forum. She's the founding member of the Open AR Cloud Association, serves as the governing body board and co-chairs the Open AR Cloud. She's the principal member at the Metaverse Standards Forum and serves as invited expert in standards working groups in Kronos Group, Open Geospatial Consortium, W3C, and ETSI. So, Christine, really appreciate you taking time being part of the podcast. This is something which I kind of pulled off from the net. It will be great if you could start with a brief introduction, your background, your journey in the field of immersive tech, and what is it that got excited? Why augmented reality?
So I got involved in tech just as an emerging technology when desktop publishing first started. So, now it seems so normal to see we're even moving away from print, and we don't even see that much print in my life anymore. Try to minimize it. And so at the time, it was very unusual and sort of breakthrough that anyone could use PageMaker or some other tech tool like that to make a newsletter or a flyer or to publish themselves. So it was 1991. It was really, the internet had started, but there wasn't a web. So I was interested in desktop publishing, and someone said to me, "You should start a newsletter about multimedia." And I said, "What's that?" And so I started the QuickTime Forum, and I did that for a couple of years. And it was a newsletter for developers of QuickTime tools and technologies and content. And what I realized is that Apple, who really had started QuickTime, was moving away from the use cases that I was interested in. They were moving really into entertainment and education. And so I said, that's neither one of those are areas I want to go into. So I'm going to shift. And I pivoted to video conferencing. That's where I found my home. I dug in there and I became a researcher, a seeker of truth and knowledge like you. And I wanted to just help this community of people who are providing products and services to grow and to accelerate. After 10 years in that field, around 2002, 2003, I was pretty bored. The field consolidated several times, and there was a lot less to talk about, even though it wasn't mainstream like it is now. I was looking at both video conferencing and streaming media, and together I called those two dynamic data types. They were real time. When they arrived at the user's device, they could bring value, but only if they were organized in a temporal sense, visual and auditory, but they had to be organized by time. And so this was the sort of a core principle of what I was doing when I moved to Europe in 2004. And here we had 3G. And with 3G, you could start putting multimedia across the network to mobile phones. And I thought that was where I should branch out and dig in and get to understand that better. And it was quite soon after that that I realized that these devices were going to have a lot of more sensors than just camera and microphone, that they were going to have GPS and compass, and that this proliferation of sensors, that the phone would become this mass of sensing devices altogether. So then from that was just like a very small step to studying augmented reality, because the phone knows so much about the user's context and can also inform so much more about that user's interests and anticipate where they're going. So by 2006, I was thinking, I didn't call it artificial reality or machine learning or whatever. In fact, in the early days, I didn't even know it was called augmented reality, but I knew it had something to do with reality and this sensing and me as a human being, giving me an interface to this digital data. So that's how I got started. And there was so when I got thinking about this, I thought about how augmented reality I needed to do what I could to keep the ecosystem alive and the ecosystem growing and expanding. And the key to that for me was standardization and interoperability. So I started organizing these people all over the world. We've got together 3 times a year in person to talk about interoperability for augmented reality. They were very, very rich meetings. We all learned a lot from each other. And, it just was a fantastic, in a way, a hobby. But I couldn't really make a business out of it. So one day I was wondering where this journey was going to take me when some large enterprises in aviation, maritime, shipbuilding, oil and gas and power and energy. We were sitting around the table talking about the future of augmented reality, and they said, yeah, we have a lot more problems than interoperability. Our issues are there are other issues that are more important. And we said, well, why don't we start an association so we can pool our knowledge? And that's where the area began, the AR for Enterprise Alliance. And I believe in the principles of interoperability very firmly. I believe that they provide a layer on top of which innovation can accelerate, and everybody can more clearly understand the value that they add to the whole stack. So I've been creating what I call a standards landscape to try to understand, where are those little nuggets that are so important that are going to drive everything else. And so I've worked closely with Neil Trevitt. He's the president of the Kronos Group. I don't know if you've interviewed him, but he's a font of information and he's very valuable in our industry. And he said, Christine, we should start an organization that's just about interoperability for the metaverse. And I said, but the metaverse, that's not me. I'm allergic to the metaverse. That's like VR stuff. So I really resisted, but he ended up convincing me that it was a good idea to latch on to this new term that actually was 20 years old already, but being redefined in real time to include augmented reality. It's still not a term that I use in my consulting practice or that I feel strongly about, but the Metaverse Standards Forum was created to help us, all of the people who advocate for interoperability and want to get away from closed silos. We all want to build upon an ecosystem and not just be locked in. I think that's the best word for it.
Right,
So
right. And thank you, Christine, for like kind of uh, running us through the journey, right from the early days of web to, the transitioning to the mobile to augmented reality and, laying the foundation by enabling and empowering the ecosystem. Because I strongly and firmly believe that, these technologies will only serve you good when the larger population knows about it, whether it's the consumers or the businesses. If they don't know about it, nobody's going to move uh, the needle. So yes, I mean, thank you for doing that. And I think it's so important to understand this technology and what can it do. I mean, laying down the standards and the interoperability issue. I want to get into that, but I also want to I kind of, I mean, get into metaverse and spatial computing. Obviously you're allergic to VR and also the term metaverse, but at one point in time, just maybe not one point in time, just maybe like a year and a half back, I think when Facebook kind of rebranded, I think there was a huge hype cycle and then everybody was into the metaverse thing. And the term coined by Neil Stephenson. Today, I think, because of Apple, the narrative of spatial computing, I think the world is kind of getting into the spatial computing because the term coined by Simon Greenwald. So you, I think, recently did a panel discussion on the CES 24. It was titled post hype, metaverse panel discussion. So yes, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of even if I Google about metaverse, I mean, it's nobody wants to even take the term or the word metaverse itself. What do you think is happening over there? And do you think there's going to be a revival of sorts?
I'm going to start with the future first and then sort of back up. That post-hype metaverse, I think industrial use cases and the enterprise productivity, risk management, and efficiencies, those benefits of having augmented reality are so compelling. They pencil out. You put those numbers in a spreadsheet, how much you buy, how much you save, and the time savings, the reduction of errors and the reduction of risk in a wherever you have complex systems where a human being is involved in the assembly, the maintenance, or operation of something that they may not have been trained on before. And this happens many, 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 many times a day. Thousands, millions of people are faced with, gee, this product that they weren't trained on because it's so old or it's so new. And so I think that the benefits of having augmented reality in the industrial use environment, in the workplace, especially where it's complex, risky, where there's a lot of danger. These use cases are so compelling that we don't even have to describe them in detail for the enterprise anymore. Those people, they bought on the decision makers are still waiting for the right hardware and software to come in. And that's one of the other things that's happened over the last 18 months, is a lot of people did their proof of concepts and their pilots using HoloLens and HoloLens 2. Wasn't perfect, but now that Microsoft's not really so strongly supporting, it's not evolving, the ecosystem around that platform has just lost a lot of its energy. And then we also see problems with the fact that we didn't have a diversity of tools with which to create content. We had Unity. Okay. There was Unreal Engine too. But that's not diversity, where one company owns a very, very substantial majority of the market in terms of the tools. And that does not promote innovation and creativity. Everybody who wants to be involved in augmented reality or VR has to learn, has to go up this very steep learning curve to learn these tools. And that just prevents us from making good progress. So we need the hardware. We need more low code, no code alternatives to creating content. And that's what I've seen in the last a year and a half. Is just a complete explosion of the no code, low code. And then more and more companies are experimenting with tools that they've never had before. It may be now that you just need a monocular, or you decide you're going to use assisted reality because you can't deploy $4,000 or $3,000 devices on hundreds or thousands of people. So we're really held back by the display price points and capabilities. It's not just their price; it's that they are not light. They have a lot of functional requirements that remain to be done. So I think that the technologies are going to have to be proven out in the enterprise before consumers like us will ever have a product that we can wear all day and use in our daily lives. Of course, there are some great use cases for smartphone AR and VR in cultural heritage, in wellness. There are some use cases that consumers can adopt, but it's still a little gimmicky. It's not quite to the level that it is in the industrial workplace and the enterprise use cases. VR, I think, is valuable for training and for all kinds of simulations and the things that happen before I go to operate, before I go into the real world, before I'm confronted with these unusual circumstances. Do you follow what I'm saying? I'm not sure if I answered all your questions.
Right. I mean, because the entire XR tech stack has got so many drawbacks, right from the price points to the hardware to the no code. But I think, there is this converging tech stack of AI, Gen AI is also kind of helping. And you mentioned that, the diversity of possibly 3D engines, because currently we only have the two mains, Unity and Unreal. But
Yeah,
maybe there'll be more of these Gen AI tools, because there's already just text to 3D 3D your Gen
exactly.
AI plus. So I'm sure that the rate of which the tech is accelerating, I see a lot of convergence, and hopefully that this will solve the problem of, then maybe there'll be like many tools which will be able to offer you, and to create
Automatic automation. Just
automation. Exactly.
what I was thinking about, 15 years ago, I had in this mind, in my mind, this fictional situation where the device and the whole system behind you anticipates what you need and brings you that information in real time. And now, as you say, with Gen AI and the other trends and the great computational complexity, and then we have so much computational resources now with the cloud and the edge and so forth. So we don't have to rely entirely on the endpoint in that display. So we're distributing the work to more intelligent systems. And I think that there's a great possibility that we won't need to author experiences in this manual method. And that's absolutely the only way it's going to scale. Because
Right.
I don't think anybody's going to be, spending their days, weeks, months, and years tweaking the little models and making sure that things are exactly where they need to be positioned. About
Right.
spatial computing, you know, I the first systems of AR were only based on either a QR code or your GPS, your position, your geospatial orientation. And for the mobile, um, we relied a lot on the geospatial orientation and position. However, it was not reliable enough, and it's still quite sensitive to disruptions and interference, like a body of water or a big metal thing, like a car. Those draw they cause errors in compasses and other systems that we would need to have fully operational spatial outdoor computing. And then that's another point, is indoor versus outdoor. Think about it. We're outdoors a lot more than indoors. And yet, most of the devices that we have, we can't use outdoors because it's too bright. The sun is too bright. The displays are not well adapted to the situations in which human beings are spending most of their time.
Right. Those are really, really valid points, and I'm sure that, going forward, there'll be somebody will kind of sort out these head wearable device, which could possibly work outside also, as well as, as well it's works inside. The term spatial computing was coined by Simon Greenwald from MIT, and now it's the hot topic, because Apple has got into it. So, would you be able to explain the term spatial computing briefly to my listeners, please?
It is as strongest affiliated with 3D. It's really about 3D space and being able to detect, to capture in real time what's happening in that space, what the space has in it. So you have to first identify the blobs or the outlines of the different objects. You have to categorize the objects. You have to then understand what a human being might do with those things. And that includes walls and floors and ceilings and tables and all the outdoor things. So I think spatial computing has a lot to do with the segmentation of space once it has been acquired in a artificial intelligence system. And it has to be, I think another thing that spatial computing really embodies as a concept is the notion of interaction with these different components within the space. So it sounds like we're just walking around in a 3D map, but in fact, the map is the background and the objects are the focus of our attention as humans. So while it conveys very much the expanse, the width and breadth and height of space, it fails, in my opinion, to encapsulate this interaction with the things that are near and dear to us, the things that we are focused on. But I believe that it's also incumbent upon whoever comes, has the best marketing team to grab on a new word and try to take that as far as they can. I mean, XR, extended reality, that didn't really have much use until Microsoft started using it because they were selling a VR device and an AR device, and they just said, well, we're just going to put an umbrella term over them. So XR, wasn't really one of the terms. We used to call it mixed reality. So it's a this debate or the journey that we take through our vocabulary is important only to the extent that it helps us reach more people and to get more people excited about something. The fundamentals are that these technologies are leveraging a convergence. As we said before, convergence of computer power, better sensors, lighter weight, lower power consumption, the ergonomics of the devices that we can expect to see. We're just riding the wave of this of an exciting technological well, it's a lot of money behind it is really what's going on. There's a tremendous amount of investment right now. I know that in XR in general, it's a lot of people invested in 2021, 22, and have been disappointed. But I believe there's still a lot of opportunity for investment because we're not there.
Right.
There, since we're not there, since we have not reached the minimum viable product really for the mass market, because we don't have a runaway adoption in any one platform or any single device, there's still huge opportunity.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. So I think, yes, there's so much opportunity because we in the cusp of the transition from or or 2D interface, which is locked us for the longest time. I think we're going to transition from 2D to 3D in that world. Yes, I think immersive tech stack, leveraging with AI or Web3 or underlying economic layer, I think is going to be holding it holds so much opportunity, and there's so much that we can kind of tap into it. So exciting space, and you rightfully pointed out these narratives or terms are are needed by companies to convey a specific marketing opportunity, so that maybe hopefully we get in more people onboarded into this technology. And I
Yes.
believe that maybe when we just drop, when we I think the best tech at this point in time are our phones, and we don't even call it a technology. It's something that we use. So maybe in the near future
Yeah.
we won't give it names. We'll be just uh, transitioning from carrying technology to wearing technology, and I think the whole world will be a canvas to kind of play around with. So it's like a be-
Absolutely.
beautiful
You're
beautiful
really
future.
describing the evolution that I saw, in the 90s around the word multimedia. So, in 1991, everybody was text and paper. And then it was like, oh, multimedia, that's dynamic things on your screen moving around. Now we don't say multimedia anymore. That's long gone. And we don't talk about, go to your web browser and do XYZ. We talk about, register yourself, and everybody, it's implied that you're going to go to a device that's connected to a network. You're going to find a page or whatever we say we're going to do or we instruct others to do. We assume that there is the use of these technologies we've now grown so accustomed to having with us all the time. And it's exactly what you say. Instead of carrying, we'll be wearing. I saw a few interesting things I want to touch on at CES. One of them was the degree to which the miniaturization is happening so quickly. There are chips that are so specialized now for vision, for the human vision. The one I'm thinking of is a company called Prophecy, and they are an event-driven computer vision platform, and they have many uses for it. But one of the ones that they demonstrated is following where the user is looking. Uh, and then we can, from knowing what you're looking at, we can then make some assumptions about what you might want to do. And the Apple Vision Pro is going to have a much more powerful eye tracking and gaze detection. And that modality, the modality of looking and pointing instead of trying to type in anything or trying to speak to it, is much more intuitive. It's more like what we do in our everyday lives. We look at what we're interested in. We look at what we need to focus on. And so the miniaturization is also leading to some other things that are coming back to the word wearable. Many of us have smart watches. We might have smart jewelry, might have other smart attire, clothes in the workplace. Many people have sensors, in their garments. And one of the things I saw is a development of chips for body area networks. So body area networks can be more bandwidth, lower latency to communicate between the devices that are on our bodies. And so having, our eyewear might be one thing that we can expect to have connected to other processing power without a cable, without Bluetooth. So the miniaturization, the use of new communications technologies are incredibly important. They're driving a lot of this
Yeah.
under the hood. We can't see it.
How cool is that? I mean, because I think in the next few years, possibly a decade, I mean, these things are going to mature so much that possibly all of these, I mean, right from our clothing to possibly the glasses to maybe like your cup, everything is going to be sensorized, and those sensorized objects are going to give us more information on, okay, this cup of coffee that you're having, maybe it's got much sugar or less sugar and stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to be intelligent information that we're going to have, and it's so exciting. You've been spending your work, and you've dedicated your time in the space of standardization and interoperability. Can you elaborate on that? Why do we need it? And maybe also talk about your organizations that you've been part of, right from the Cronus Group to Metaverse Standard from it to area.
I'll start with the standardization interoperability. There's a lot of ways to achieve interoperability. Um, and standardization is one of the ways. Other ways are open source projects, publishing of APIs, so that and making them freely available for anybody. And the main reason for interoperability is for integration. So we've been talking about how all these things are converging into these new experiences and the promise that we'll have of this anticipatory service. But if it's not integrated, then it's siloed. That's the opposite of integration. So we need to have common understanding about how data flows between components in order to meet the goals of the user. And without these agreements about the data formats, about their encoding, we lose a tremendous amount of power, literally battery power, but also computation tasks and time translating between systems. And that's what we have now is the systems don't all have standard ways of interchanging their data. Therefore, they all have their proprietary means and they export and import. And you can imagine what that's like. It just takes a lot of cycles. That's one of the drawbacks is the integration is slow, if possible at all, clumsy, costly, and so forth. So the main reason for interoperability is integration so that we have a seamless conversion, so that when you have a customer who wants to change from, their stereo vision and 3D everything to just a little monocular, they can just take those off and put the next ones on, and there's a choice on the part of the user. So I'm giving you an individual person's choices about what they need, but it's more critical at the large enterprise choices. These large enterprises can't get locked in to one provider of technology. If they do, or if that is all they have, they won't adopt. It's just that simple. They have to have choice to build resilience. And in this day and age, everything's changing so fast that companies can't, their risk management departments won't allow them to invest in things, technologies that they can't get out of, that they can't switch between quickly. So I think that's so fundamental, the principle. Now, I think that I particularly like open standards developed in large communities, and the standardization should be done by people who are actually going to implement those specifications, not be done by people who are theoretical, let's just say. So I'm not a coder. I can't test whether a specification will work or not. So my contribution is to organize the people who might be interested in interoperability and to get those people discussing with one another how to compromise and where they can find that best solution that works for the maximum number of companies. So that's why interoperability, that's standards. I'm involved in leadership roles because I can't code. It's like, what do you do when you can't code? In terms of the organizations, I think the the long view is that we won't need to have communities that are dedicated to one technology. So for example, the AR for Enterprise Alliance, because it will be ubiquitous. And so we will have reached a point where your decisions are made with less trepidation, with more knowledge, your more choices, but more knowledge as well. So I think that these communities are very important at a critical point in time to make sure that there is not a, a funneling or that we don't get cut off, that, like I said before, in my experience, that we can get to the point where there's so much consolidation that the innovation just slows down and it's lost. So I believe that it's really the long view, but we will have, there used to be associations for keyboards and mice just as user inputs. There used to be groups that were, talking about uh, modems. We don't do that anymore. It's still important, very, very important for us to talk about data formats for 3D, for spatial, for preparing standards around ethics, privacy, safety. Those are in front of us, looming larger than life. Those are the big problems that are ahead.
Right, right. So tell me, how does this pan out? I mean, because our businesses currently run on a top-down hierarchical manner. I mean, when you these big tech companies, they build tech company because their motto is obviously profits, right? So and you spoke about data flow. Today, currently, it's the opposite. Data is siloed because that's the only way, because data is gold. Data is the new oil. And when you talk about these metaverses, us transitioning from Web 2.0 to Web 3, the future of computing, and so on and so forth, uh, how does a company allow the assets, data, user data, identity to allow it to flow from one point to another? How do you see this interoperability protocol panning out, impacting everyone?
Yeah, that's really tough, Eddie. You hit the nail on a really big problem. I believe that the employers, so the companies themselves that are developing, uh, you know, doing construction or oil and gas mining or building cars or satellites or things like that, they have very sensitive information within their companies that it is intellectual property they can't let go of. So they have that kind of information. They have to protect it at all costs. That means that they are unable to, at this time, take on platforms that offload or that take their very sensitive intellectual property and put them off on some server somewhere that could get hacked, or in the Amazon cloud, or they just don't. That's not an option. So what they are creating are really their internal data silos, which they're protecting very carefully, and they try to incorporate things from the outside that they consider to be valuable, including their customers' information. How far did customer A drive the car? Or where did the robot fail when it was in the field? They need to know that to improve their products in the future. So it's a very delicate balance. And I think we have a lot to learn in the fields of data security, encryption, and maybe that's where Web3 really will bring the value, to unlock these data warehouses and data lakes by permitting a level of transfer and exchange that is safe, considered safe for the intellectual property and safe for the end customer. So unfortunately, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I really respect those who are, and I think they are key to our futures. Meanwhile, I believe that there's a lot of information that should be and is public. So, talk about spatial computing, the places that we walk through, we all share this planet. There are open, shared places where we are continuously scanning and acquiring information. And I believe that that should be localized. I don't need to know everything about your neighborhood because I'm not there. You're there. And you don't need to know everything about my neighborhood because you don't ever come to Montreux to visit me, right? You can if you want to. But the point is, these spatial maps can and should remain local to that person. And even the spatial computing maps that we're talking about inside a building or a warehouse should stay in that space in order to enable people who are physically in that space to do more, to do less dangerous things, or to do things safely. So I think we have the whole data management equation is extremely complex, but as we continue to scan our world and scan all the things in our worlds, um, more of it should stay local. More of it should stay in the ownership of the person whose house you're in, or the company whose facilities you're visiting, even a store, even a retail establishment. But where we are shared, where we're going in the shared world, then we should have the ability to benefit from all the people who walked there before and who had sensors on and who had good experiences, or who had dangerous experience. And so we can learn from those, and our AI systems can learn from them, from all of that past data that is shared. I'm not a privacy nut. I don't mind if my picture is out there, my emails out there everywhere. It's like, yeah, sometimes it causes a little bit of a problem, but overall the benefits are greater than the drawbacks. So I can allow that for myself as a human being, but everybody has a different, starts from a different place and has a different opinion. I think there's some really good thinking going on around governance, data governance. And one of the standards groups that I'm working in that I believe is far ahead of the pack is the Spatial Web Architecture and Governance Working Group. It's called IEEE P2874. Google it. You can find it on the web. And it's these people were really thinking much, much farther ahead about how data is exchanged carefully, how it is protected, who it belongs to, and making all of these technologies work together in a safe way.
Right, right. Yeah. So I think the future looks exciting, though it has quite a lot of challenges, which I'm sure we will kind of overcome. Perey Research and Consulting. Could you share some of your works and how you have helped enterprises?
Well, I work with so many different kinds of companies, but they tend to all be large companies that are facing a challenge. They have some in-house knowledge, some experts, and they need some eyes and ears outside of their companies because, being an employee in a company, you have to think about what your boss wants, what the people, your peers, your colleagues, you don't always have the visibility into a specific topic. I'm I'm so involved in the augmented reality space that if you ask me, what's going on with finger pointing, I probably know somebody that I can go ask about that. Or if you want to know what are the best use cases in airports right now, I've been working in that area. There's 15 years of experience in airports. Airports are just another type of city. They're another type of ship. So these companies that build and manage big infrastructure and big projects are my best partners. I learn from them, and I am their outside eyes and ears so that I can detect new developments and bring them in for evaluation. Not everything works. Not everything's going to work the first time. So much is a matter of timing. As we had these ideas about what the future might bring, and some things develop more slowly than we expect. But with this artificial intelligence, things are moving so much more quickly than we expected that we need to be on alert, high alert for new opportunities, and that's the kinds of projects that I work on: gap analysis, new opportunity analysis for partnerships, for sales, for research also. So really, I'm looking at um, how to match up the gaps and the offerings that are out there in the world. It's very
Right.
exciting.
Right. Can you share a couple of examples of how enterprise can leverage AR, VR, MR?
Everybody tends to begin with training and learning use cases because those can be separated from what we call the production environment. And we can learn a lot about people's behaviors, and we can also get them accustomed to the devices in a safe place. Once we've done the learning use cases, there's a lot of use cases that are around conception and design. That's still very strongly VR focused because you're looking at 3D models and perhaps sharing those, evaluating if and how they might fit in a warehouse in the future, or how they fit in a factory, or how a building might look in a space where right now there's another building. So there's an evolution. I think the most important and exciting use cases are those that we can demonstrate reduce risk. What do we mean by risk? Risk to human life, loss of time, loss of materials, sustainability, so pollution and things like that, those kinds of risks. Wherever, I think your best friend is your risk manager. Within a large enterprise, go to that risk manager and say, what are your biggest headaches? Where are the risks in your company? And what can perhaps having knowledge and being able to guide people in a safe way to resolve or address or avoid those risks, you can get very fast return on investment. I think the other thing is, as I said, where things are complicated, complex ideas, or specifically complex physical products, things that we can touch that fail sometimes, that we need to repair or operate. So machines of all different kinds. I think that things that also navigating within a very large campus or a large city, navigating when you're driving a car and you're trying to find an electric, a place to charge your electric vehicle. Navigation as a category of use cases is almost, it's here, it's very close to here. If people want to use it, want to disclose that kind of information. But it's not part of the risk equation. You can still give somebody a map and say, find this place. You don't need augmented reality most of the time to find your way around. So those are the most important, I think, in terms of where you have things that are complex, you haven't been trained on it, they're unexpected. We also talk about dexterity. So the human being has these, the hands and our fingers. And when a task requires our hands and our fingers and we haven't done it very many times, augmented reality can be an excellent guide to get it right the first time. And so you wouldn't necessarily build a robot or automate a system that you don't do very often. This is things like custom fill in the blank, custom car assembly, custom satellite assembly, things that are made one-off. You have these set of instructions, and there's not going to be a repetition. There's also, coming back to the safety and risk management, there's a lot of use cases around compliance, because these industries, these heavy old industries that are going through digital transformation now, they have a lot of regulations around them, regulations to protect the workers. And so they need to comply with those regulations.
Christine, really, really appreciate you taking time being part of the podcast. What comes next for you? What's your moonshot? And what are you excited for in the space of these converging technology stack? And maybe if you got some advice to all listeners, consumers as well as enterprise.
Well, I think the future is very bright, and I'm going to stay where it's the brightest, which is outside. I think that too many people have gotten addicted and attached to their desks and their computers and even their phones. And to me, the journey I'm going in is to be outside in the physical world, experiencing life to its fullest. And I want to encourage people to not forget that there is this beautiful place, this planet that we're on for a short while, and we have to do what we can to make it better, or at least to not spoil it more. So that's where I'm thinking, metaphysically, and where I think that the world should be more focused is less in the deep dark depths or in the virtual reality that's synthetic and not real. And I would say to people, keep experimenting, keep innovating, keep being creative, because there's a lot of opportunity in this field as well as in many other fields. These are very, very exciting times. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Christine. Thank you. Really, really appreciate you taking time being part of the podcast. Please keep on doing your work. It's really needed in the space of standardization and interoperability. And rightfully pointed out, I think the world is going inwards. we need to move outward, go out in the physical world, experience that. Now I've got an 8-year-old boy and he's constantly glued to the computer. I hope
Yeah,
that he steps out more and interacts and change the world for the better, because there are a lot of people who are closing it. Politics, religion, we need to just make it a little open so that it is for the better for everyone, more diverse. So really appreciate
that's
you taking time.
that's it. That's it. We have to work together to make the world a better place.
Thank you. Really appreciate this. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye. Thank you.